a good day to be a fan of the sport of hockey, my friends. Welcome to this digital edition of NHL Now. Lauren Gardner, EJ Raddick here with you. And each we come bearing some good news for a change. The
Oh,
first time since the NHL was put on pause, 75 days later, it was made official that there is a plan in place for hockey to return. And before we get into the minutia of all this, each, I know you've been all over this thing. What are your overall thoughts on this announcement and this plan to return?
well, it's great to see the league trying to move forward here and putting out a plan for fans to kind of take a look at that. This, if we can move forward and if things continue in the right direction, this is the way we want to try to do it. And it's interesting. It was interesting to me of like some of the things that we know, but we're not so sure of. I mean, like moving forward when they have this 12-team tournament on the East and the West, 24 teams total. Like, how do teams advance? Is it going to be a bracket system, or is it going to be based on seeding of your win percentage during the season? So that is our point percentage. So that's going to be still to be decided. And then also when you think about the length of a series, the early that quarterfinal, I don't know, quarterfinal, let's say qualifying round is a 3 out of 5. And then after that, is it a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 7? They're still deciding some of these things. So a lot to digest with the commissioner's statement on Tuesday. And for hockey fans out there, it's just the idea, the excitement, the possibility of maybe playing again is probably really good news.
Isn't it amazing? If I would have told you 2 years ago that this would be happening, you probably would have said I was crazy. But you're right. Just the possibility of the league returning to action is enough to get all of us excited. A lot of this is fluid. There isn't really a set timeline at this point, but there were some details. You saw some of that up there. 24 teams will be in two hubs. You will have your top four seeds in each conference playing round robin for that top seed. But then you have these other teams, the remaining 8 teams in each conference, playing for their playoff lives. And then if they end up out, they could potentially get a number 1 draft pick. So I would say it's kind of win-win. But let's look at a few of these matchups here. Let's start with the Canes and the Rangers. Now, if you're a Canes fan, you're thinking this is great. Like, the team is already in. But then you look at the head-to-head record here, and oh wait,
Yeah.
the Rangers swept the Canes, and the Canes now have to play for a playoff spot when they originally were to begin. Like,
Yeah, it's going to be, it will make for a very interesting matchup because of the fact that the Rangers had so much success during the regular season. A lot of that was based on really good goaltending. I can remember early in the season, Henrik Lundqvist had a 40-plus save performance against the Hurricanes, and that was part of it. The Rangers have that depth in goaltending with Shesterkin, with Georgiev, with Lundqvist, but on the flip side, the Hurricanes are a pretty strong group. They have the possibility, the likelihood of getting Dougie Hamilton back. They traded for Sammy Vatanen, a right shot defenseman from the Devils. He never played because he was hurt. Maybe he can jump back into things for the Hurricanes. They have the experience of making a long run last year. So that makes for, I think, a really interesting matchup. And remember, the teams made a trade, Lauren, at the trade deadline. And Brady Shea, not too long ago, a Ranger, now a Carolina Hurricane. So there's a lot of different storylines, I think, in that series, and it'll be one to watch to see how it plays out if we get to it.
yes, the big if, of course, you saw the shots on goal there as you referenced the good goaltending by the New York Rangers. So again, anything can happen. Now let's stay in the East for a second as we look at the 8-seeded Maple Leafs against the 9-seed Blue Jackets. Now, the Leafs were barely in a playoff spot going into the pause. The Jackets were just out with this under 34% chance of making it to the postseason. Obviously, we only
Yeah,
have
I mean, listen, I don't think, Lauren, this is something that the Toronto Maple Leafs are all that excited about, playing a really healthy,
yeah,
what you would think would be a healthy Blue Jackets team with Seth Jones, arguably the best defenseman in the game today, coming back into the lineup for the Blue Jackets. A number of other guys were out for the Blue Jackets. They've got two good goaltenders in Corpusalo and Morlinkins. Both will be healthy. This is a matchup of styles. The Blue Jackets will want to grind on the forecheck and really keep the Leafs pinned in. The Leafs will want to get that high-octane offense going with Matthews and Marner and that group. A lot of pressure will be on Freddie Anderson for the Leafs. So, I mean, this could be another really interesting series. And it was only last year, we remember how dangerous the Blue Jackets were against a really higher thought of opponent like the Tampa Bay Lightning. So this is another matchup that could be dynamic to watch.
Yeah, sweeping Tampa in the first round. Or you look at those kind of opposite styles of play each. I just want to touch on this quickly. Maybe that run and gun offensive style might be easier to get back to that system. Whereas if you play kind of that like pin 'em in style like the Blue Jackets do,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be more difficult to kind of find that dynamic again and find that chemistry with your team?
I think it's wide open, Lauren, right? Because I mean, we could sit here and like we could argue pro and con about it, but like how well has each player been training? How will they feel coming out of training if we get to the games, which won't take place likely until late July? So I think it's one of those things that could go either way. I think the goaltenders, they're always critical, right? I think they'll be even more critical in this circumstance. And I think the Jackets would have an advantage because they have two guys they can count on. The Leafs don't have that option.
Yeah, whenever Elvis is in the building, anything can happen. Now let's get over to the West here quickly. I want to talk about the Preds and the Yotes. Obviously, Preds in that sixth spot, they're a perennial playoff team. And then the Coyotes, like I had to look again at some of the players on the roster. We're talking Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, a healthy Darcy Kemper. So this is kind of an interesting matchup.
Yeah, the Coyotes were great in the first half of the year, and the key was Darcy Kemper was healthy, and
Yeah.
he really backstopped that group. But they still didn't score a ton of goals despite adding Kessel and eventually Taylor Hall. They were still struggling to score goals. When he went out, they really struggled. Well, he should be healthy and ready to go. That's a big plus for the Coyotes. On the flip side, for the Preds, they were really finding their way. They had changed coaches. John Hines had changed a couple of things up. The Predators were starting to play better. They were on a nice run. So they probably were really disappointed to have that run stopped. We will see if they can pick up where they left off. As you can see by the season series between the teams, they split a couple of games. So it'll probably be pretty even.
It's always tough to recapture that momentum. I remember seeing the Preds in person in a 6-game playoff series when I was covering the Colorado Avalanche. And they were just so tough, and they always knew how to bounce back. They just kind of had that it factor in the postseason.
Yeah, experience, I think, is going to be a real plus for all these teams because, again, nobody has been through this circumstance before. We're going to be playing in empty buildings in a neutral site, and there's going to be all kinds of different things thrown at these athletes. Guys that have experienced more different things, I think they will be better suited to handle this type of situation.
Well, speaking of experience each, let's talk about the 12 seed Blackhawks, who obviously had this dynasty going for a long time.
Yeah.
Twinville, obviously that was a few years ago, but they're matched up against the Oilers. Can we say Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, who's now the Art Ross Trophy winner? I have no idea how this thing's going to shake out.
Yeah, it's funny, Lauren. Every time I talk about playoff series, even in normal times, it's always about injuries and matchups to me, right? And now injuries aren't necessarily a factor, we don't think, at least from what we know now. The matchups, though, are still important, and it's really interesting because you see the season series, the Blackhawks won 2 out of the 3 games. They've got real experience, like I just talked about with guys like Taves and Kane and Keith. They really understand it, and it's got to be like a new lease on life for these guys because they were likely going to be outside looking in. Now they're getting a chance to be in a tournament, and who knows, maybe run the table and win another cup. Not likely, but they do have an ace in the hole too in Corey Crawford in goal because he's had experience of being in these big games. So if he's healthy and playing well, that gives him a great shot. The Oilers obviously have McDavid, they have Draisaitl, and they have a couple other quick things here, Lauren. They've got a really dynamic power play this season, and their penalty kill has been way better. Give Dave Tippett, the coach, a lot of credit because both of those areas have been a big problem for the Oilers over the last couple of years.
There's that saying, and obviously you and I are very biased in this direction, but there is nothing better, my friends, than playoff hockey. And we hopefully have that to look forward to later on this summer. With that, for EJ Raddick, our great crew here at NHL Now, NHL Network, I'm Lauren Gardner. Thanks for joining us. Let's do that.